Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Joined today with Draft Professor Peter Quinn, live from Scotland. Peter, how are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. I've been at work and done all the stuff I needed to get done today. So now I can relax and talk some draft. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you are a Seattle Seahawks writer. Can you remind everybody which publication you write Seattle content for?
Yeah, so it's for Huddle UK. We've got a writer for all 32 teams in the NFL based in the UK, and so we've got plenty of content going out all the time. So if you follow at Join the Huddle UK on X, then you'll see all the content that gets put out there. It's fantastic work from all the writers, so there'll be something there for everyone.
Okay. So we're going to be doing some Seattle mocks with the Draft Professor Simulator. So as I'm getting the simulator started, what are you thinking Seattle needs to accomplish in the draft this year?
So hopefully, I think that a lot of it will be based on what Seattle does with it, retaining its key upcoming free agents. Kind of in terms of that roster at the moment, it's looking pretty good. It's pretty deep right across the board, and I think that it's something that if Seattle picks the right player, particularly in round 1 and 2, that player should have a bit of a segue to kind of build their career at the start. They might not be needed as a full time starter right away, which I think is a massive boost for players' development for the most part. So I think a guy who can maybe make a difference on kind of limited snaps early on, and then you can kind of work them up, build them up into a full-time role. So I think Seattle's in a good place where they can potentially look to more of a project player potentially than some other teams can who need that immediate help to try to turn a franchise around. I think the Seahawks are in quite a good place at the moment, and that provides a nice foundation for them to do what they feel like in the draft, really.
Okay. So we're going to do the first mock we're going to do is this thing here called the First Round Fanatic Challenge. So we have Seattle. We've checked First Round Fanatic Challenge here. And a First Round Fanatic Challenge is 5 unique one-round drafts. So I just removed Dante Moore from the simulator. So the big draft news of the day is Dante Moore is not available. So he's been removed from the simulator. This will be the first time I have seen the simulator without Dante Moore in it. But we'll go through what round 1 was. So this is Mendoza, Bain, Love, Reese, Fano, Tyson, Tate, Styles, Downs, Woods, Maui, Noah, Bailey, Delane, Lemon, Falk, Sadiq, Lomu, McCoy, Ione, Thieneman, Ty Simpson, Pregnon, Isaiah World, Denzel Boston, Caleb Banks, TJ Parker, Casey Concepcion, Max Ahinakor, Avion Terrell, Caden McDonald, Elijah Surratt makes up round 1. And you're on the clock for Seattle at pick 32. What are you thinking here?
First of all, to start with, I like the name right at the very top there. I think that I was mentioning there that a player who can potentially take some time and try to make some impact in a limited number of snaps at first, potentially as a designated pass rusher. We've seen what Cassius Howell can do throughout the course of this season. He's been massively productive. And I think that he's someone that they could look to at the end of round 1 there. It would surprise me if he's still there. I know a lot of people are very high on him because of that really good upside. But someone who could, as I say, make a lot of impact in a rotational role maybe in his first season, and then you can build from there. I think that would be a knock it out of the park hit for the Seahawks in the first round.
Okay. So I took Cassius Howell. The simulator immediately starts a second first round, but this time it sniped Cassius Howell from you 4 picks before you selected. So I don't remember exactly who Houston took. I think Houston took Ahinakor. So he's available. What would Seattle do if Howell is off the board?
So I think I would go for somebody who wasn't available in the in the first attempt here. If we just check the edge players available, please, again. Oh, have I maybe missed it? Did TJ Parker go in this one as well? Yeah, he's off the
Yes, he
board.
did.
Okay, so in this case, I'll go for somebody who I believe I was keen on in the first kind of mock draft, the 32 team mock draft that we did. I think that a more rounded edge player, I think he's very, very good against the run and quite underrated as a pass rusher. That would be Zion Young out of Missouri. Again, I think that he'd be kind of filling in for Boye Mafe, who I don't imagine the Seahawks will want to retain. He's not quite had the kick forward that they'd maybe been hoping for, a guy who gets a lot of pressures. Can also make some splash plays against the run, but he hasn't taken that next step to be a player who I think they'll want to spend big money to re-sign. So I think that he might be let go, and I think that Zion Young's someone who could jump in there and make an impact. I do think edge is a really important position for the Seahawks, because you've got DeMarcus Lawrence there, who's obviously not getting any younger, and other than Uchenna Nwosu, there's maybe not too much production. Derek Hall will be entering the last year of his rookie deal next season as well. So I think it's definitely a position the Seahawks need to look to for the kind of long-term plans for the future.
Okay, so the simulator gives you the third mock right after the first two. It snipes Howell and Young from you before your pick.
Okay. Yeah, if we keep having a little scroll at the moment, I will just looking at what's available. I think if we go back to the top here, I think top of the list. I know that understandably on a lot of social media platforms and stuff, there's been a lot of highlight reels, or should I say lowlight reels, put together of Anthony Bradford's performance for the Seahawks. He's had some noticeably bad reps in there kind of across the course of this season. So I think that if he's available, Chase Bisontis might be someone that they could look to really strengthen. Double dip on O-line for last year and this year. Also, Gray Zabel's come in and immediately helped move the Seahawks from being a kind of perennial bottom five O-line in the league up into the middle of the pack. And I think that managing to strengthen it, to get Bisontis in to probably play as a right guard, I would imagine, would kind of help them take that next step and push the O-line forward. They've got Charles Cross nailed down for the long-term future now. They've got Abe Lucas as well as a right tackle. So I don't think that there's any need for an offensive tackle for the Seahawks. However, strengthening that interior could help to take their run game to the next level, and that could be something that'd be a massive difference for them.
So I want to just shout out the Chase Bisontis pick in round one again. Bisontis is a player that I've noticed that not everybody is grading the same. So similar to you, right? He was sitting at the top of the Seattle board. This was not the first time Chase Bisontis had been picked on this simulator for Seattle. Jerry Ostrowski and Owen both said immediately first round grade when we covered him on a podcast. So there's definitely a faction that has him this high or higher. But then there's other people I talk to, and they're saying, like, I won't touch Bisontis till round 3. So the grades on Bisontis, there's some variation to them. So on the fourth mock, Howell, Young, and Bisontis get sniped before your pick. Ty Simpson and Dylan Thieneman are there. Neither was there the first 3 times we did it.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't go for Thieneman here, just because obviously I think the Seahawks look like they should be set at safety and even potentially as a big nickel for next season. Could we look at the defensive line options, please?
Yeah. So Lee Hunter should be here. He's probably just a little bit lower.
Yeah, so that would probably be where I'd tempted to go here, because I like Dominic Orange and a couple of others, but I think I wouldn't feel too bad about Hunter at the end of the first round. I was talking about this earlier today, that I think defensive tackle could be a useful pick for the Seahawks there, because again, Jaron Reed is getting a little bit older. Leonard Williams will still have a couple of years kind of left of high-end production, but you've got to look beyond that. And I think beyond Byron Murphy, there's not too much at the moment for the Seahawks. And I think it's definitely an area that they might potentially look to strengthen.
Okay. So the simulator then starts the fifth mock, and in the fifth mock of a first round challenge, it snipes Cassius Howell, Zion Young, Chase Besantis, and Lee Hunter, who were the first four players that you took. So if those four guys are off the board, who is your BPA?
So if I was to say, if we scroll up a wee touch potentially just to see who's gone before, because I don't want to go for someone that's been
Okay, got
picked.
it.
Yeah.
So Johnson, Concepcion, Hill, Ione, McCoy, McDonald, Tyson, Love, Falk, Banks, Parker, Simpson, Sadiq, Lemon, Fano, Lomu, Downs, Woods, Bailey, Delane, Boston, Maui, Noah, Styles, Tate, Mendoza, Reese, Bain.
Okay, I was getting my hopes up there. The further up we got, that Denzel Boston might still be on the board, but no, he was taken in the top 7. Because I think that he's one that would be a fantastic pick for the Seahawks there. I probably don't have anyone that I'd have a first round grade on left in the wide receiver room, despite that being a position that I think could be a dark horse for the Seahawks there. I'll maybe go for Keith Abney here. I'm not entirely sold on the Seahawks taking a cornerback in the first round. I know it's a really popular move. They've got Devon Witherspoon for next season. They're going to want to keep him long term. And I'd be surprised if they let both of Reek Woolen and Josh Jobe leave the building. So at that point, do you sign someone to be potentially your third or fourth choice option there as in the first round of the draft? I would be surprised, but I really like Keith Abney as a prospect. I think that along with Chris Johnson, two of the guys that are our first time through on our cornerback podcasts just jumped off the tape for me. And I think that he's someone I can't see falling to the kind of certainly outside the top 50. I'd even be surprised if he's there in the second round.
Okay. So that finished the first round challenge. You took Cassius Howell, Zion Young, Chase Besantis, Lee Hunter, Keith Abney. So anytime you see an A+ grade, that means that's the same player the simulator would take if that was the mock draft scenario presented. Meaning that if Young and Howell were off the board, Besantis would be the top pick, just depending upon how the rest of the first round went. So on the Draft Professor Simulator, all 32 teams each have their own player board. So everything we just did is specific to Seattle. It doesn't affect the player board for the other 31 teams. So, okay. We're going to now do more Seattle mocks. So Seattle only has 4 picks, rounds 1, 2, 3, and 7 right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick Seattle, and we're going to turn on this thing here at the bottom called Fanatic Mode. So Fanatic Mode is something I designed into the Draft Professor Simulator, which says make every mock unique. Peter will not be allowed to pick the same player twice. I put this up to 8 because we're going to do 8 Seattle mocks, and that's set to 7 rounds. Ultimately, we're only going to make 32 picks because Seattle is missing a few picks in early day 3. But we're going to go through Seattle. We're going to do some 7-round mocks, and we will listen to Peter's best 8 options for Seattle in round 1. So round 1 from a first round challenge and round 1 for Fanatic Mode should be really similar. After the first round, the algorithm deviates, but the first round should be really similar. So you can see Cassius Howell sitting at the top of the board right now, but I will review what round 1 is. Mendoza, Bain, Love, Reese, Fano, Tyson, Tate, Styles, Downs, Woods, Maui, Noah, Bailey, Delane, Lemon, Falk, Sadiq, Lomu, McCoy, Ione, Thieneman, Simpson, Pregnone, World, Boston, Banks, Parker, Concepcion, Ahinachor, Terrell, McDonald, Surratt. So I don't remember if Avion Terrell went to the Rams when we did it earlier. So there's a chance that there's other simulator users right now that some of that round one stuff could change. But if the draft falls like this, is Cassius Howell still your favorite?
I think so. There's a couple of names above that who, if they'd managed to fall all the way to 32, that I would definitely have jumped on there. But as it stands, yeah, I think I'd probably be looking Cassius Hill here as I say, an impact edge for the Seahawks.
Okay. So what are you thinking in round two? Is there a specific position that you want to look at?
So here, I think so. I know I'd mentioned defensive line potentially, but I'd like a wee look at the wide receivers. I think the Seahawks room. I think it's not as certain as people say that Rashid Shaheed will re-sign, and I think I'd be looking for kind of a possession style receiver here, kind of quarterback's best friend type. So I feel like it's maybe a little early for Malachi Fields for me. I would like to choose someone who we saw on the first page there. I would go for Jacoby Lane. I think that he was one of the first wide receivers that I watched in the summer when we did our summer boards with Tell, and again jumped off the tape. Big body, really good at red zone threat as well, which I think will be important for the Seahawks. And someone who adds something to their wide receiver room that they maybe don't have with the likes of Torrey Horton or JSN or even Cooper Kupp as well. So I think that would be a lovely fit for the Seahawks.
Okay, so Howell round one, Jacoby Lane round two. What would you be looking for in round three?
I think at this stage I'd definitely have a look at the defensive line. I think that would be where I'd be having my next pick probably. And as much as I like Tim Keenan, but I think that I would go for the first one that came up there. I think that Darrell Jackson has again upside. I mentioned that I think the Seahawks could look to strengthen in positions where they're already looking quite strong, and I think that's one of them. That he's someone who could add something a bit different for them. Just again with his sheer size profile, and he's proven that he's able to be a disruptive force on that interior line. He'd have time to grow, wouldn't necessarily need to play, more than 50 snaps a game, for example, or anything silly like that. So I think that he could manage to kind of ramp in as a Seahawks player and kind of grow alongside the likes of Byron Murphy, potentially even Riley Mills if he can get going following that long-term injury that he had.
Okay, so it's almost getting to Seattle's 7th round pick. You did a really good job of filibustering for the simulator.
Thanks. Yeah.
So my advice, and I was telling Peter this backstage, when you're using Draft Professor, the player boards move based upon user behavior. Players will drop in this simulator all the time. So one of the things that I would suggest is, just look through a specific positional board and see if there's somebody that you have graded a lot higher than round 7. So like J. Michael Sturdivant was somebody we talked about on a podcast last night. If he's there round 7, that feels like a good pick. But you can go through a lot of different positions and you might see a guy where he shouldn't be there in round 7. So is there a position that you'd like to, let's say, search around in and see if there's a guy that you really like?
At this stage, potentially linebacker. I think the Seahawks have lucked out a little bit this year. I think that Drake Thomas turned into a really good contributor for them. And you've clicked exactly where my eyes went there. I think Bryce Butcher is a player, obviously, great profile as an athlete in general, as a sports person, and I think that he's someone that could come into a team and immediately provide special teams value. And you've got Ernest Jones there, you've got Tyrese Knight, Drake Thomas, but I think that long term, finding somebody who can maybe partner Jones, if it turns out that Drake Thomas was maybe a one-hit wonder this season. You don't, I think that we need to see a bit more production long-term to know that he's a long-term starter alongside Jones for the Seahawks at linebacker. So, yeah, I think that would be a nice pick. And as you mentioned, he's someone that I think that he's got a bit of variance as well in terms of where people value him. But, yeah, I wouldn't mind that pick for the Seahawks at all.
Okay. So it immediately starts the next mock. Cassius Howell was taken 8 picks before you. And just as kind of a hint, like I know from listening to Peter, he's waiting to see if TJ Parker drops, right?
Yeah.
So I bet he's going to be available next time because whoever we take now is going to get assigned to that Buffalo pick the next time. So you will begin to see players drop when you're in fanatic mode. The difference is, like, if you're not going to draft Avion Terrell, you're going to have to go find another player. If you're not going to draft Elijah Surratt, you'll have to find another player anyway. But if the board falls where Howell is off the board, is this Zion Young again?
I think, yeah, I'd probably be Zion Young again here. I think it doesn't look too different from the last time in terms of the board that's here. Again, so you mentioned TJ Parker. Obviously, I think that's one that I'm looking for. There's another couple of players that I'll maybe wait a couple turns and see if they fall down. I can give a bit of my thinking behind that as well if they fall to the Seahawks, because I think certainly the kind of 20 to 25 range, there's quite a lot of guys that could go there. Or you could, just depending on positional value, you could see them fall to the Seahawks potentially at the end of the first round.
Okay, so in round 2, Jacoby Lane gets sniped before Seattle's second round pick. Is there another wide receiver here that you would consider at the end of round 2?
So I think I'd probably not go receiver this time. I'd maybe look at the defensive line, as I mentioned before. I think they're, yeah. So I'm liking some of the value here, definitely. Yeah, I mean, if Lee Hunter's still there at this point, I think that's an excellent pick. So I'll go for that this time. I think there's, again, even another couple of the names mentioned there would be excellent value for the Seahawks at the end of the second round. But as mentioned, I would be okay with the Seahawks taking Hunter at the 32nd pick. If he's there at 64, that's a no-brainer for me.
Okay, so you do Zion Young, Lee Hunter. Is there a wide receiver here you like in the third round?
I'd maybe still hold off on that just now. I would maybe have a little look at the running backs, if because it's not a sure thing. We've seen, I know fantasy owners have been extremely disappointed with the split of carries for the Seahawks with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. It's not certain that Walker resigns, so I think there's a couple of nice ones, value picks near the bottom there. But I think if we go back to the first page, I like Jadarian Price as an option here for the Seahawks in round 3. I think that would be an excellent pick at that stage. And as I mentioned before, I think the Seahawks really need to look to cash in on that run game. The offensive line is continuing to grow and develop every year. So if they can manage to take another step forward, another year's experience for Zabel, Jalen Sundell, the center as well, and provided they can stay healthy, Cross and Lucas at tackle, then coming in alongside Zach Charbonnet, I think that there's a good bit of variety there, because Charbonnet's kind of your often used by the Seahawks in the short distance type of stuff. Get him to run between the tackles, run hard, run straight, and I think that Price would make a really nice 1-2 punch. Not quite the same level of player as Walker for me, but I still think that it could be something that works out nicely for the Seahawks there. It means that they're not having to resort to maybe try to pick up a veteran or hope that Kenny McIntosh or George Holani step up next year, because I think that would be a big risk for the Hawks.
So I drafted both Seattle running backs, and I just start them both. That's how I solved that fantasy problem.
Yeah, I'm not far off doing the same, to be honest. It's a frustrating one if you have one on the start and one on the bench, because going into any week, there is no knowing which is going to be the standout.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So you do Zion Young, Lee Hunter, Jadarian Price. Is there a wide receiver that you like in round 7 here?
Yeah, so I was quite happy. I saw last time rounds that John Stribling was still on the board. He's someone that I was quite high on in the summer. I thought that he would rise up boards. He didn't have the amazing season that I'd hoped for at Ole Miss, but he kind of came good in the playoffs. Second half of the season really did a good job moving forward. And I think that over the potential, I think he's a Shrine Bowl invite accepted. So I think that there, and potentially even the combine as well, could do him some good. And that late season tape will help push him up some boards. So I'd be surprised if he's still there at this point in the draft. However, I think that he's a really nice fit there for the Seahawks, potentially as that kind of bigger possession receiver that I'd mentioned.
Okay. So we're in the third mock, and TJ Parker fell. The simulator made sure that Howell and Young were off the board before you picked, so that each time you do this, there's going to be a player that drops. You just have to pay attention to who's picking before you to be able to expect, like, I'm expecting the next one, we should see Casey Concepcion drop, if that would be a possible target. So is TJ Parker your BPA over players like Abney or Basantis?
Yeah, 100%. For me, I think that Parker is the ideal pick for the Seahawks at 32. I know that he didn't have the season that maybe some people had hoped for, where he was being talked as a potential top 5 pick. But still, I think the upside is there. I think that he's quite a well-rounded player across the board. And as mentioned before, I think that he could make the kind of big splash plays for the Seahawks immediately, and then kind of build from there, where you're not needing every down consistency from him right from the start, which will be a good kind of pressure valve for him.
So in round 2, the simulator is sniped Jacoby Lane and Lee Hunter. Are you looking defensive tackle again, or are you looking at a different position?
I think, could we have a quick little look at the safeties, please, just in case? I think
Taff, Wheatley, Genesis Smith, Jalen Husky.
Yeah, I like Taff, but I think in this situation, just judging by who's here at the moment, I would probably go defensive line again. Yeah, I like Taff as a prospect, but it's maybe a little early for me. So I would go for Dominic Orange. I think that he's again similar to what I was saying for Darrell Jackson. I think that he's a big physical specimen who will have time to learn in a Seahawks defensive line room that's already stacked, and plenty of kind of experienced vets for him to learn from and develop his game, take it to the next level.
Okay, so you do Parker and Orange in rounds 1 and 2. Is there a place you want to look for round 3?
Yeah, I'll have a look at the. Can I have a look at the interior O line? Actually, I'll see if there's some value here potentially.
Rutledge,
Yeah.
Burton, and never assume anything with the order of the player boards, because the player boards on this simulator change based on how users do mock drafts. And if you don't trust the, let's say, the average person on the internet, know who you're looking for. So I'm looking around for guys. Like, I was looking to see if Josh Thompson was here, and I didn't see him. So I was looking.
I was having a look for a guy who I think went a few picks there, just a few picks before me. I think I was sniped a little bit there. And Logan Jones out of Iowa was one that I was looking at. He would be, as much as I like Jalen Sundell, I think that he can do a good job for the Seahawks at center. I think that Logan Jones would be an immediate upgrade there. Actually,
have you watched Matt Golbin yet?
I've actually not. So I was about to say, looking through the list there, he's not one that I went through and watched.
So Owen has a day 2 on him, and I've talked to one other draft professor with a day 2 on him. So other people really like him. They just may not like him day 2. So that would definitely, if you need a center, that's definitely a center to watch. He'll probably won't be one of the top 5 guys you watch.
I was about to say he wasn't even kind of one of my next men up to be watching. But I think actually I've had unfortunate timing here, because it looks like a lot of the kind of day 2 interior O-line guys have just been taken off the board. So looking at this list here, if we go back up to the top there, I think
So Aiden Fisher is on. I was looking to see who was on the second page. You like York in round 3?
Yeah, I like that pick for the Seahawks. Again, I think that he's someone who wouldn't necessarily need to come in and start straight away, because I think the Seahawks have to keep Drake Thomas around for at least one more year and see what they've got there. But York's kind of also a bit of a smaller linebacker, but I think that he's shown on tape for a couple of years now that he's a player who can be a real difference maker, brings a real physicality despite not being the kind of biggest receiver, biggest linebacker. And and I think that he's someone who will probably end up in the NFL level outplaying his draft stock slightly, because teams might be a little bit concerned about the size profile, but kind of quite a well-rounded player for the most part. I think that sometimes he can struggle taking on blocks, but when he's got a straight path to the ball carrier, the play's pretty much over then and there.
Okay. So we're at the round 7 pick. You've gone all defense. TJ Parker, Dominique Orange, Taurine York. Thoughts on where you want to look on the board next?
Just having a quick look. In fact, if we stay here just now on that first page, I'll go for one of the guys that I've quite liked this season. I quite liked when we were talking on our cornerback podcasts, just slightly further down. I know I was high on Takario Davis, but I like Ephesians Prysock as a player. I think that he'd be one that could come into the kind of cornerback mix for the Seahawks. He wouldn't necessarily need to be a starter, but he's one that maybe a year or two down the line, if he's practicing well and shown something there, maybe if there's an injury or two, who could really step up and kind of show his value. He can get a little bit grabby at times, and also doesn't have the most fluid change of direction. Obviously, he's a big cornerback as well, but I think that he times his hands really well at the catch point to make plays in the ball, and is not a bad tackler. I know that some of the taller corners can struggle with that, but I think he's one that can really make an impact there.
Okay, so we're in the 4th mock of Fanatic mode. Cassius Howell, Zion Young, TJ Parker are off the board. And I'm looking, so I don't know if Jeremy Bernard was there in round 1 before. I was looking to see, did Casey Concepcion went to Denver. Got it. So Concepcion didn't drop. What would you do if Howell, Young, and Parker were all off the board?
So I would go wide receiver. I see that Chris Brazil is the top name there. I actually wouldn't go for him. I prefer Elijah Surratt personally. I think that he's again had an excellent year. He's kind of a good physical receiver, tracks the ball well for the most part, and is a lot more elusive than he gets credit for. I think a lot of the time he's more than just a kind of downfield or go up and get it type guy. So yeah, I think that would be a nice pick for the Seahawks. I've still not seen the receiver that I'd really like fall quite that far yet. So yeah, if I think if those options that we mentioned were off the board, then I would like that pick for the Seahawks.
Okay, so in round 2, Jacoby Lane, Lee Hunter, Dominique Orange, snipe before your pick, so you won't be allowed to pick them. Is there an edge here that you like at the end of round 2?
Yeah, so I think that's it. I think Akeem Mesidor is somebody that I'd be looking at here. I like R. Mason Thomas, but Mesidor, I think, again, would be able to bring a kind of obviously a real experience to the Seahawks. And again, they've proved in recent years that they're prepared to take a risk on players who've maybe got a bit of the injury history. Torrey Horton flashed in places this season. The Seahawks immediately threw Riley Mills back into the thick of it after he came back from a long injury layoff, rather than letting him wait until next year. And I think that they wouldn't be put off too much by Mesidor's medical red flags, which are considerable. Obviously, he's an older prospect as well, as has been mentioned on many of our podcasts. But I think that he's someone who would bring a real impact into that edge room and a bit of diversity in it as well. Kind of looking to, obviously Ruben Bain gets a lot of the attention for his college team, but I think that he's someone who's had a real massive impact throughout the course of this season.
Okay, so Elijah Surratt, Akeem Mesidor, what would you be looking for in round 3?
I think I would maybe have a look at the again, I like some of the defensive line players there, but looking at the safeties, I'll have a go this time. Again, it's maybe a touch early for me, as I mentioned before, but I would maybe look at Genesis Smith here as somebody who could come into that room and again have a while to work. Julian Love's not going anywhere for the Seahawks. He's a fantastic player. I think a really underrated player, and I wasn't that excited when the Seahawks kind of brought him in, but he is turned into a real leader for that defense. And they've got Kobe Bryant, who's an upcoming free agent. For me, I don't think the Seahawks should re-sign him. He's been good, but the issue has been this year. Actually, when the Seahawks have had Ty Okada in there alongside Love, they've been a much more solid defensive back room. They've managed to cut out the missed tackles that Bryant's provided. So I think, even if Ty Okada stays with the Seahawks and acts as a starter alongside Love, Smith's someone who kind of long-term, I like the potential upside of that pick.
Okay, so we get to the round 7 pick, and again, you're getting really good at filibustering that 3rd round pick. We have a few minutes to wait. Okay, so Surratt, Mesidor, Genesis Smith, rounds 1 through 3. We're in round 7 here. Is there a place that you want to look?
Again, we've not talked about it so far, so I'll have a look at the offensive tackles here, because I think that Abe Lucas has had his injury history, and it's not a given that he could potentially last a full season. So it's important that the Seahawks have some decent depth there. And there's a couple of guys that I like here. I like Ernest Green as a player, but I think if we maybe have I would probably go for Riley Malman here. I think that again, so offensive tackle, I've had my initial look at the players. It's the entire O-line I've got to go back over to kind of finish off my big board in the way that I'm happy with. But I liked what I've seen from Riley Malman as a prospect. And as I say, I think that it's important that the Seahawks look to really nail down that kind of backup or swing tackle spot, because Josh Jones has done a good job for the Seahawks this year, but he's actually appeared on injury reports quite a lot throughout the season. And I feel like availability is just absolutely key for your 3rd choice tackle, because when you get further down the depth chart than that, then it's going to be a real problem for any team, really.
Okay, so the next mock starts, and Howell, Young, Parker, Surratt are off the board. And I'm just looking to see, so Casey Concepcion is still being sucked up before the pick. Chris Johnson's here. He hasn't always been available. Caleb Banks is available. He hasn't always been here.
Yeah, I'll go with that, actually. It's just seeing that Caleb Banks is there. Obviously, again, missed a lot of time with that long-term injury, but I think, terrific upside, and he's flashed throughout his college career. And so I think, as I mentioned before, I would be quite happy with the Seahawks taking D-line in the 1st round. And he's a terrific prospect there. So that absolutely works.
Okay, so in round 2, things happen. So what I mean by things happen, so the simulator makes sure that Jacoby Lane, Lee Hunter, Dominique Orange, Akeem Mesidor off the board before Peter's pick. So those were the 4 guys he took in round 2. But in addition to that, Josiah Trotter dropped. He has not been available to you yet. So do you have Trotter graded high enough to take it 64?
I don't personally. I'm not quite as high on him. And also, I think one of my, for me, the Seahawks position more than any other, that they need an edge in the first 2 rounds. So if I've gone somewhere else in round 1, I would have a look at the edge board in round 2. And there's a couple there that I quite like. I would be tempted to go for I'll go with our Mason Thomas, because I think that the Seahawks would get those few plays early on, and I think that he would be able to make an impact on the team straight away next season as a kind of designated pass rusher. Because the Seahawks at the moment quite like firing Leonard Williams out wide, even sometimes Mike Morris, one of their kind of depth defensive linemen, from a wide alignment. So I think that they're set for guys maybe on 1st down, defending the run. So I think having a real flyer of a defensive pass pass rusher, designated pass rusher, would be fantastic for them.
Okay. So in round 3, Daryl Jackson Jr., Jadarian Price, Torian York, Genesis Smith are all off the board before your pick. Is there a running back you really like here in round 3 still, or was Price your only day 2 grade left?
I could maybe be tempted on Damon Claiborne, but I think if we look at wide receiver potentially here, there's one name that I've maybe kind of mentioned already. Yeah, so for me, I think Malachi Fields. It's maybe slightly early, but with the Seahawks not having any picks in kind of rounds 4, 5, and 6, it wouldn't surprise me to see them maybe reach a little bit with this one. And Fields is exactly the sort of possession receiver that I was talking about before that the Seahawks could do with to round out the receiver room. He's got excellent hands, kind of some of the best in the class in terms of drop rate, and I think that he's not necessarily the most explosive. But if for example, if they do re-sign Rashid Shaheed, you've got JSN as a deep threat as well. I still can't work out if the Seahawks plan to keep Cooper Kupp around next season. They could rework his deal and keep him around because he's had a great impact. The players and coaches can't seem to speak highly enough of him and the impact that he has in their wide receiver room. I don't know if that's enough to kind of justify keeping him on the team next year. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think particularly if he doesn't stick around, then someone like Fields would be a really useful addition to the Seahawks wide receiver room.
Okay, so Caleb Banks, R. Mason Thomas, Malachi Fields. As an FYI, round 3 doesn't feel early for Malachi Fields by a lot of people that have done this podcast, right? So like I am doing one of these mocks every day at 7 with somebody, with a fan from whichever team. Malachi Fields, people are picking him a lot earlier in round 3. So,
okay, yeah.
So I don't know, like it might be early based on your grading. Doesn't feel early to me at all.
Okay, fair. I think for me it was maybe just kind of some of that, as I say, that lack of real explosive quality in terms of his kind of even necessarily foot speed as an athlete. I think that maybe holds him back slightly for me, but I would feel comfortable doing that if I was the Seahawks, definitely taking him in the 3rd.
Okay, so we're at round 7 right now. I'm going through. So Bishop Fitzgerald is still there in round 7. Curious where you have Miles Scott, because you were looking at safeties earlier. So there were a few safeties that did drop.
Yeah, there's a few there that I'm a little surprised, even surprised that Colin Wisniewski was still there. But I think I saw on the cornerbacks list there somebody that I'll kind of plug as one that I quite like throughout this process. If we go down to the bottom of the page, and I know that Hezekiah Masses had got a lot of attention, but I really like Brent Austin, California. I think that he'd be a useful option as a slot defender long term for the Seahawks. I know that at the moment they're using Nick Emanwori there a lot of the time. They've got Devon Witherspoon who can play inside, but I think that Emanwori potentially long term might kind of move back into a kind of more standard safety role, maybe a couple of years down the line. And Austin, I think that is a really nicely rounded player, makes really good plays at the catch point. Again, really good just ball player, got good instincts in zone for the most part as well. And yeah, I think that he'd be another one, potentially a backup to go in with. But we're talking round 7 here, and I think if you can get a useful roster player and potentially a good special teamer as well, then that's a good result in round 7 for me.
So Peter, I love how you're explaining every pick. So we have done 5 mocks. We have 3 to go. Okay, so the players you've taken already in round 1 are Cassius Howell, Zion Young, TJ Parker, Elijah Surratt, Caleb Banks. The simulator makes sure they're sniped, so you won't be able to pick them. Who else would you want to look for here?
So there are 2 players that I'd kind of been hoping might fall. One is Caden McDonald, that I'd hoped that he might manage to drop down to the Seahawks at some stage, and the other it's more of a long shot would be Denzel Boston, but I wouldn't surprise me if he went top 10 potentially. So I think the Seahawks have, with their good form, have played themselves out of a potential pick there. I think here I would be likely to go with the top option there, Chase Bisontis, as I mentioned in the first 5 picks that I did.
Okay, so you go interior offensive line. Is there something you're going to look at here in round 2? And again, all the guys that you've liked so far have been sniped. So the players that were sniped include, got to get to that spot of the draft order, Jacoby Lane, Lee Hunter, Dominique Orange, Akeem Mesidor, R. Mason Thomas are all off the board. What would you do?
I would have liked if because I'd taken a lot of the edge rushers there, I thought that Lawrence might have managed to fall. But if not, I'd maybe again have a look at some of the running backs, see if the board's fallen at all differently. I don't imagine it.
So Jonah Coleman's here.
Yeah, that is where I would go. I really like Jonah Coleman. Just his low center of gravity, ability to bounce through tackles. He can run round tacklers as well, but he's just one of those players that never seems to be on the ground when you expect him to be after that initial tackle. He seems to manage to wriggle away, maybe make an extra 3 or 4 yards, potentially a lot more than that. So yeah, he's a player I'm a big fan of.
So I love this one because when you do fanatic mode, sometimes you got to get off the rails. Every mock that you've done before this one, you took an edge in round 1 or 2. So you haven't addressed edge. So my instinct is that's where you're going to go. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think so. I think again it was more just that I'd ran through a lot of my options that I liked at that stage. I quite like Max Llewellyn as a player, so I'll go for him here to change things up a little. I think that he's maybe one who could play a little bit of kind of interior here or there on passing downs. He's got a good, kind of quite a well-rounded player for the most part, very physical, and yeah, I think that's it. It would work well for the Seahawks. I think that it has to be an edge in the first 3 rounds for certain. For me, I think round 1 or 2. But I know that some of the draft professors are very high on Llewellyn and view him potentially as a guy who could kind of sneak up towards the. I don't know if anyone's got a second round grade on him or if they're that high, but I know that there's a few that really like him.
So the way that I'm looking at it is Llewellyn to me feels like he's a round 3-4 guy. So what it feels like to me also is there's going to be about 125 top 100 grades. So meaning that you have somebody in your top 100, somebody else says, that's a round 4 or 5. Somebody else, they put somebody in the top 100, like that's a round 4 or 5. So there's definitely some muddiness at the back of the top 100. So we've done Chase Bisontis, Jonah Coleman, Max Llewellyn. You haven't done wide receiver yet. Would that be where you look, or are you going to look at a different position?
Yeah, we can have a look at the wide receivers here, I think, and see what's available. I'm not as enthused this time, I think, judging by the names we've seen so far. Yeah, I feel like I'll maybe have a look at the defensive lineman, and then I should hopefully have somebody there that I'd be keen to take a shot with.
Defensive lineman Cameron Ball is there in round 7. So this is a round 7 defensive tackle board, everybody. Albert Regis and Cameron Ball are the 2 names that stick out as me, that if they're there in round 7, Terry Webb as well, but unsure of which guys you like for the Seattle scheme.
Yeah, I'll go with Regis. I think it is one that it's maybe tough to work out. I think when you have defensive lines that are quite stacked at the college level, it's difficult sometimes to work out if a player is maybe kind of taking advantage of other guys getting a lot of the attention. I know that was kind of that was kind of held against him sometimes because the Clemson D line was so loaded that maybe he got a bit of a free run at it sometimes, and I really liked him every time I watched the tape. But yeah, I like Regis a pick there. I think that works quite nicely for the Seahawks. I think again, interior roll line, running back, edge, defensive line. That would be a good haul for the Seahawks.
Okay, so now we are in the 7th of the 8 mocks that we're doing. And the trend is any player you take in one mock will be sniped in all the other mocks. So Cassius Howell, Zion Young, TJ Parker, Elijah Surratt, Caleb Banks, Chase Basantis. You love all of them for Seattle. They're all sniped, but I do think you may like who dropped.
Yeah, I think Caden McDonald would be an excellent choice here. I think that he might even be a better prospect than Tillich Williams was the year before as a D lineman for Ohio State. I know that rightly, Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles get a lot of plaudits for their fantastic play this season. I think that a large part of their production has come from getting a free run at the ball carrier because of the work done by that defensive line. I think they've been phenomenal at times this year.
Logan Jones dropped around too.
Yeah, so I think I could go Logan Jones here. Again, we're going to have to change it up. We've got a lot of mocks that we're doing here. I think that center might not be the most pressing need for the Seahawks because they've got two guys that I know they're very, very keen on in Sundell and Oluwatimi in the building. So I think that Jones could be an upgrade there, though. So that might persuade them to take him even as high as the second round.
Well, I wasn't trying to force you to take him. I thought you were looking to see if he dropped. I misunderstood.
Yeah, no. To be fair, I do like the pick. As I say, I think it is a potential for a real upgrade there. And I think, as I mentioned before, turning that interior O-line into a strength is going to be key for the Seahawks moving forward. It takes pressure off their passing game, and then Sam Darnold can thrive.
So round 3, Darrell Jackson Jr., Jadarian Price, Torian York, Genesis Smith, Malachi Fields, Max Llewellyn, all players that you've liked in round 3 have been sniped off the board. So there would be some players that dropped. And I also know that you haven't drafted an edge. So I don't know that Derek Moore had dropped around 3 before.
No, I definitely didn't think he had done because he's a player that I quite like. So that pick would kind of be the obvious one for me. I think that makes sense there. And again, as much as I like some of the other names there, I do think that he'd be the best fit. Quite a well-rounded player at edge, and judging by the profile of some of the guys the Seahawks have drafted recently and even looked for since in trades since Mike Macdonald took over, I think he likes his edge rushers to be able to be useful in all facets of the game, so that he can rotate them based on fatigue factors, based on the matchup that he likes on a particular down, rather than this guy can't play the run, I have to sub him out now. So yeah, I think that Derek Moore would be a good fit for the Seahawks in a similar mold to, as we were talking earlier, with Zion Young. I think that Moore is a kind of very well-rounded player, as I mentioned, and I think was it Wilson was the other Missouri edge who's has he gone back to school? I'm pretty sure. So I think as a pair they'd worked really nicely. I think that Moore was definitely my favorite of the two, and I think they'd make a good pick for the Seahawks there.
Okay, so McDonald, Jones, Moore. We're in round 7. Is there a position you want me to look for?
Do you know what? We've not had a look at what the tight end room looks like at this stage. Now the Seahawks have got AJ Barner, and they like Elijah Arroyo. Obviously, spent good draft capital on him recently, so I think they potentially round 7 they could look for more of a blocking tight end. And I must admit, I'm a lot of the guys that I'm seeing here are kind of got some guys who are kind of more receiver kind of move tight ends, but they could even take a chance on a Tanner Arkin. I think that would work there. That's good value for kind of so late in the draft. I think I'd be surprised if they took a tight end early, because as I just mentioned, they took Elijah Arroyo in the second round last year. It's not a real position of need, but they like having multiple tight ends on the park at the same time, and I think that it's Arkin would be that's really good value to still be there at that point in the draft. So I'm happy with that.
The best time to take a tight end is at least a year before you need them. So like Buffalo took Jackson Hawes last year, and there's a chance that Dawson Knox is not on the team next year. So tight ends take a long time to develop, so draft them before you need them.
Yeah, you've got a fantastic tight end room over in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that happened with AJ Barner as well. They still had Noah Fant on the roster. They signed AJ Barner, and then this year in his second season, we've seen him really take strides forward. So I think that definitely tracks. Obviously, Concepcion's fallen here, so I, I don't know if I'd necessarily. I don't think it's a great fit for the Seahawks potentially. People were asking at the start of the season, how do you get JSN and Cooper Cup into the same offense? I'm not sure, kind of how great a fit he would be. I see Malachi Lawrence there. I'd be prepared to take a shot there. I think it's earlier than a lot of people would like to see him drafted. It's later than some as well. I know we were discussing him with some of the draft professors today, and some are very high on him. But I think that the upside again is there. You can manage to kind of slowly work his snap count up. And there's plenty of good players for him to learn from there. I think anyone coming into that Seahawks edge room where you've got a D line with Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed, you've got Demarcus Lawrence on the edge, Chenna Nwosu, another veteran player who's played in multiple systems to quite a high level now. I think that would be a fantastic place for Lawrence to develop his craft and become a real top player.
Okay, so we're in round 2, and all of your favorite round 2 picks have been sniped. So that would include Jacoby Lane, Lee Hunter, Dominique Orange, Akeem Mesidor, R. Mason Thomas, Jonah Coleman, Logan Jones.
I think we could maybe have a little look at the interior O line again, just to see if any of the ones that were there before have gone. Yeah, so I'm not as high on Dunker as some others are. I know. Cage Casey would be an interesting pick here. I'd be okay with that. I think that again, adding somebody to compete with potentially Anthony Bradford for that starting role would be good for the Seahawks. I think they need to kind of ignore the fact that they clearly whiffed on their pick of Christian Haynes. He was meant to kind of come in and take over that right guard role, and it just never happened. He didn't have the play strength that I think they were looking for, which was a shame. But here, I think wide receiver would be a nice place to go, and I like Ted Hurst. I think I'd maybe go for CJ Daniels. I can't remember now which cornerback it was I was watching. It was maybe one of the Florida State guys, and I think CJ Daniels just had him in a blender the entire game. He's a fairly big guy, but moves really well, and can win at the line of scrimmage, which for a lot of kind of bigger wide receivers isn't always the case. Can kind of get defenders on the back foot right at the snap, and then has pretty nice hands for the most part. I think can make defenders miss kind of battles for an extra yard or two. And I think that, again, similar to a lot of the guys that I've mentioned previously as wide receiver prospects that Seattle could be looking at, he's someone that would kind of round out that receiver room quite nicely in general, I would say.
Yeah, so I like this one. Malachi Lawrence, Cage Casey, CJ Daniels. We're at round 7. Is there a position that you feel that you would need to address to make this mock complete?
I'm not sure. I don't necessarily love the defensive line options that kind of you see come the very end of the draft. So I think maybe linebacker here. I see Drake Bowen there, who I quite like. I think that would probably be where I'd go. Again, we watched quite a bit of the kind of cornerback play for Devonta Smith, Christian Gray throughout our podcasts, and I was always impressed watching Bones play. I think that maybe he's, in terms of physicality and in terms of athleticism, he's not the most special. But I think that, again, if you're getting to the later rounds of the draft, we saw with, I think it was Jay Higgins last year, as another guy who kind of a really solid college player and can step up and make a bit of an impact. Omar Spates in the past, really solid college player who's managed to make a kind of the starting job with LA his own. So yeah, I think that would be a nice pick for the Seahawks.
Okay. So you get this great looking graphic, and I want to talk about the grading for a minute. So The grading on Draft Professor is completely interactive. It's basically, do other people agree with your pick? So A plus means multiple people have picked Cassius Howell to the Seahawks to where he was the top player on the board. D meant Bryce Botcher probably hadn't been drafted to Seattle in that spot before. So he's 32 spots off the top ranked player at that round. That's the D. So the reason I point that out is that if you were to do another mock and you pick the same players, there's a really good chance that the grade improves the second or the third or the fourth time you pick them. So here's kind of the test. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a mock, and I'm specifically going to do a mock for Buffalo, but we're going to look to see who Seattle takes in the mock, right? So what the design of the simulator is that the players that Peter picked should be the players that Seattle takes. So that's what we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at. For Buffalo, I'm pretty much targeting wide receivers. So there's the Denzel Boston. He's not going to get by Buffalo. So that was TJ Parker on that one. So Seattle took TJ Parker. Seattle took Dominique Orange. That was a player that you took.
Yep.
So I think I'm going to do Jalen Husky here.
Skylar Bell. I think that was Skylar Bell that time. Yeah, that's and to be fair, I think I had a lot of wide receivers throughout my picks, so that kind of, again, it tracks with the Seahawks. Yeah, I mean, this is I know it's you're doing the Bills draft, but this is a strong Seahawks draft to start with. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, I've done Barham to Buffalo so much in round 4, but that's by far the best player that was there.
Yeah, he's a really nice player. I quite liked him as an option last year when I started doing my scouting last year. But obviously, I think he's a bit of a tweener, which means that teams will have to have a clear plan for how they want to use him. But really talented player.
So I haven't done interior offensive line yet.
Okay, I think the Seahawks pick was just there. If we just scroll up slightly, I think we each had our.
Oh, was Seattle's in rounds? Okay, so it was Drake Bone.
Drake Bone, just as we did there. Yeah, fantastic. That again for me, that's an excellent Seahawk call. I'm really happy with those 4 picks. And as you mentioned, to be fair, the Seahawks picking very late in round 6, so it is effectively a almost 7th round board that's available there for the Seahawks to choose from.
So I'm looking to see what I'm missing in the Buffalo mock, just in case, on the off chance somebody watches this podcast and says, well, I didn't take the right player. I really don't like the round 7 running back one.
No, that was kind of not the best position group. There's a few times that obviously for me, the end of round 6 there, that I was, I loved a few of the options that were still on the board, but that running back board was not fabulous.
Okay, there we go. So I got a slot corner and a boundary corner. That works.
Nice.
So you can see that the players that have been taken a lot for Buffalo get A's. You can see I purposely was looking for players that were further down the board, and those got D's. So if somebody likes those round 5 and 7 players for Buffalo, when they pick them, their grade will be higher than a D. So it's the way I chose to do grading when I implemented the simulator. I'm not suggesting it's perfect. I'm telling everybody that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, so I as I mentioned to you before, and I used the simulator a lot last year, and I absolutely loved it. I think that I can't recommend it highly enough to everyone. It's that kind of interactive nature that you've kind of went for. I think it makes a really personalized experience for anyone that uses it. And again, as you mentioned as well, kind of it's been updated and upgraded a lot throughout this year as well. And again, you can we've passed over an hour here doing this. I could quite happily sit there and spend multiple hours at a time drafting this. If you're someone who loves the draft, then you've got to love this.
Yep. And there's still one more button we haven't done, but I know that we only have enough time to do two. Peter, do you want to let everybody know that's watching now about all of the other draft content you make and where they can find you?
Yeah, so kind of for pretty much everything I do, you can find it on Twitter at Peter Quinn 1997. Kind of in the process of finalising a lot of my big board at the moment. So you're going to see kind of position groups come out, and you're going to see again kind of tying in with some of the Seahawks stuff that I do. So yeah, keep an eye out there. I will be posting everything, and as I kind of finalise my big board and getting involved with the mock drafts, the multi-team mock drafts that we're running here at the Draft Professors. And I would encourage anyone else to sign up if you kind of a fan of a team. Put your name down when the opportunity arises.
Yeah, so that's a really good plug. So if you want to do a mock draft like this for your team, so you want to come on the podcast and let's turn on Fanatic mode and you do your team, just go to NFL Draft Fanatic right here. No, I am Fanatic, and reach out to me. Just send me like a private message or tag me in a tweet, and we'll schedule something. My overall goal is to do as many podcasts like this for a team and just bring a different fan on. In addition to what I just said, I want to echo what Peter said. Every Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we do a group mock draft. So again, if you go to NFL Draft Fanatic, no, I am Fanatic, and you go to the pinned Twitter post, you'll see the signups for that week's mock draft. So today's Wednesday. It's Wednesday for me. It's Thursday for Peter. You are burning the midnight oil out in Europe, so I appreciate you staying awake. But from 7 to 10 Eastern, we're going to be doing that mock. We do it every Friday. You will be able to see who values the players where. It is a great board check because not everybody will see Zion Young round one. Not everybody's going to see Max Llewellyn round one, but that's what you get to see. And I guarantee if you do the Max Llewellyn pick at pick 32, you're going to, oh, yeah, some people didn't know that people grade that player that high. So, like, I knew that several draft professors have Llewellyn that high, but I haven't heard of him going into the back of round one until you did that here. So you'll learn a lot when you do the 32 people mocks, promise. But we are going to sign off. So for Peter, myself, and the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We will see you on a podcast again in an hour where Owen and Newt go through their Senior Bowl defensive line boards. Thank you, everybody.